That's the headlines, the stories, the news.
Headlines. Read all about it.
In-depth analysis on national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Hit it. Headlines.
Studio is live, mics are up. Lagos, we're in to talk about the newspaper stories in detail inside of Freshly Pressed 981.
Good morning, Lagos. Welcome once more. It's Valentine and myself. And we are going to be going through the national stories. Joining us this morning, we've got a full panel of analysts, and we want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. We've got Fred in the studio. Fred, Alison, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Always looking dapper. We always like the pocket square. Very nice. Very tasteful. Very tasteful. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, go up on our YouTube live stream. You'll be able to see in the studio. So we've also got Gbolahan joining us. Good morning, Gbolahan. How are you?
Morning, Folu. Very well. Good morning, Lagos.
Great to have you here. And we've got Ayo. Good morning, Ayo. How are you?
Good morning, fine, thank you.
All right, find the gentlemen up on their various Twitter handles. Mr. FB Alison, we've got Mr. G Quest, and at Esho1 as well, all in the studio. But we're going to go through our top stories. Do remember to send us messages using the hashtag FreshlyPress981 on Twitter and sending in to us on our WhatsApp number 0809 444 0981.
Thank you very much, Folu. So our first first headline is from Premium Times. This morning, Gbolahan, I'll come to you first for the analysis on this story. The headline reads, "It's official. INEC declares Osun governorship election inconclusive." Over the weekend, the elections happened. The Electoral Commission came out with a result that raised a lot of eyebrows. People were wondering why it was declared inconclusive. But according to this report, it said, according to Section 153 of the Electoral Act, it stipulates that a rerun should be called if the margin of victory in an election is lower than the number of voters in units where elections were cancelled. We learned that the difference between the polling results between that's the PDP candidate Adamu and Boyega Oyetola of APC came down to 354 votes, which was less than 3,498 cancelled votes. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, very interesting topic this morning. And when we look at the situation, I think we've been waiting so long for this election, the Osun State election, for quite a while now. And this serves as a litmus test to INEC and litmus test for 2019 election as well too. How is INEC going to perform? So far, the election has actually been adjudged to be free and fair. You know, there were not that many skirmishes or discrepancies in terms of like ballot paper snatching and the ballot papers getting to the polling unit on time. I think generally anyway, the election was considered to be very peacefully conducted. I think we have to commend Osun, people of Osun as well too, for going out and voting peacefully without causing any issues or so. But now where we have an issue is when we're looking at the number of votes that was conducted and the difference between the adjudged winning party, which is the PDP, there's only about 350 votes.
354.
354, differences between the PDP and the APC. And this is actually brought up issues at the moment now where PDP is actually saying, look, if we're having 350 votes or 54 votes, we should actually be declared the winner of this election. But not putting into context that there are actually 3,498 votes that have not been casted yet at the 5 polling units where there were discrepancies. There were discrepancies such as the card readers not working, people cutting away with the ballot boxes as well.
Yeah.
So in fairness, I think INEC has actually done the right thing by making it an inconclusive election. When we cast our mind back to 2015, it was, I think, in Kogi State and also occurred as well too in Bayelsa. There were issues and incidences that occurred in that election where the election had to be decided as an inconclusive election then. And the difference between votes at that point in time was over 40,000. So it makes a lot of sense now to make this inconclusive and let the people decide this time around. We still have 3,000 votes to go. Let them decide. Everybody has their right to vote.
Yeah.
So good thing that INEC has actually decided now, and they came up with it very quickly as well, to that 27th of September. The rerun will be taking place.
That's Thursday.
So we look forward to that.
Thank you very much, Gbolahan. Moving on to ThisDay newspaper next for the story. Al-Makura opens ex-governor Adamu's can of worms. Now, there's a face-off between the present governor, Umaru Tanko Al-Makura of Nasarawa State, and the former governor of the state, Senator Abdullahi Adamu. Ayo, according to the story, they said, I mean, this started when the governor of Nasarawa State, that's talking about Tanko Al-Makura, decided to, act on a petition that was presented by a corporate civil society group that alleged that the former governor, who's presently the senator representing the Nasarawa South constituency, that he misused some funds and some other allegations leveled against him. If you look at this story, really take us through the processes and how you'd see that this will play out in the near future.
First of all, the two of them are not serious. They waited towards the elections.
Why do you think so?
Because they waited towards the elections before all these jabs that are taken at each other. It's definitely politically motivated. If they were serious, this was during his stay in office 1999 to 2007. We're talking about over 11 years ago. Okay, so if they were serious about this, not just this present administration, other administrations would have probably charged something up. But I think this is just everybody trying to get each party trying to get a better upper hand towards the election. I don't really take them so seriously. I think it's just politically motivated. The only part here that is troubling to me is the youth that are meant to be the future. If you go down the story, you see one Sabonu and Musa Chiro decided to take a trek again. They're saying that they are now supporting the present Agara, that's the deputy governor at the moment, so that he can come in, because they said that he'll be able to solve all their issues. Now that we have Not Too Young to Run bill already approved and signed, and there are mates around the world like Sebastian Kurz of Austria, who is 31, who became the leader at 31, and then we have younger people doing better things around the world. We are having our young people believing that the best way for them to protest or support is by trekking, and what they mentioned here is they said they're taking after Jesus Christ in the Holy Bible, and then they said on that note, we sacrificed ourselves and took that cross on behalf of the entire youth of Nasarawa State by trekking to ask God to wipe our tears and save the state from untimely death by the way of this is ridiculous.
I mean, while we look at those sound bites, as it's kind of like the drama that's expected to play out before 2019 in some quarters. But taking a look at the major part of the story where some of these allegations were leveled, these are allegations, that are benched against physical infrastructure, things that we see and touch. So if you're saying that it's just politically motivated, who gets to ask the question then?
So
who investigates?
Here's the thing. I'm not just standing by saying that it's only politically motivated. I'm saying the timing. Okay, if this was serious business, I mean, we've spoken about this, about how this present administration, for instance, just likes to make allegations without going to court. This is like kind of similar to it. I'm tired of hearing things in the media when there's no case in courts, there's nobody properly prosecuting someone. Not just coming to the media and saying you stole this, you stole that. Okay. I'm tired of hearing that.
All right, thank you very much, Ayo. I hope you're not as tired as the next the people actually going through the next story. Looking at Vanguard newspaper for this next one, federal government collects 13 billionaire from billionaire tax defaulters in less than a month. Fred, so the story in detail says that the federal government has collected 12.66 billionaire in less than a month after it commenced the substitution of accounts of billionaire tax defaulters in the country. Now, the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Tunde Fowler, came up with this at a meeting with the Minister of Finance. Take us through the story and flesh out the details for us. Let us understand better.
So the story is kind of
narrated from the new minister's point of view, because it's telling from her. Anyway, she had a visit to federal inland revenue, and as you said, the Mr. Tony Fowler was informing her what they achieved, like in 1 month with this new policy that they put out, which they went after. They wrote to banks in May, informing them that they wanted any businesses that have done over a turnover of over $1 billion, and that's how, and they had not complied with the tax laws. So that's why they were able to attain this amount of money. And I guess from the news goes on to say how she's encouraging them to focus on what the federal government's policies or the direction of their policies is, using also going after corrupt individuals, so as they're using this to turn, people that are failing in paying the right taxes, they're probably also going to be discovering people that are creating wealth or stashing wealth without really, going through the right channels. And also she just commended them, sort of to work with work with the EFCC, work with the ICPC, Nigerian Customs. I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't have thought about the Nigerian Customs too, but that's also another way you get
information, data, importers, exporters.
Yeah,
Come on. It's a lot moving through our ports, mostly coming in. So.
Because we don't produce much.
Exactly this.
So it was just I like the fact that we're, as a country, we're moving more and more, becoming more organized in the ways where the ways we're running our government. Taxes is a good thing to pay, but we still need to continue to improve and not just seem like you're just targeting an easy segment where you can an easy segment where you can generate income, right? So, and then as this happens, we now, the taxpayers, are now going to demand, from the policymakers, because I'm sacrificing.
These funds are going somewhere.
Exactly, I'm sacrificing this, and because running your business or just running your home, you subsidize a lot of things. You're subsidizing water, you're subsidizing electricity, you're subsidizing all. Soon it's going to get to a point like, no, we need this because it's costing me a lot to subsidize and it's costing me a lot to now still pay taxes. I need you to manage and
Yeah, and one would think at the same time, perhaps the fact that they're going after billionaires, it will give the SMEs, a bit of an encouragement to pay their taxes and not see themselves as the only ones that the FIRs are coming after.
Yes, and they should also improve the whole system so that it's not a case where someone is sitting in a government organization and enriching themselves through the loopholes of, I need to pay a certain amount of money, and then if I get pay less,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fred.
Pay your taxes, everybody. Literally.
We have messages.
We go through to our next story.
Okay. All right. The Guardian has this one. National Theatre will lose its historic monument if privatized. Who says this? The GM, the general manager of the National Theatre Complex, Dr. Stella Oyedepo, allayed the fears of Nigerians that the edifice, according to the story, said is not going to be privatized nor concessioned. They said that there was no move or plan by the federal government to privatize the complex or hand its affairs to the Lagos state government to manage. Gbolahan, what do you think they would do in the face of this? If they're not privatizing it or concessioning it, what is the plan?
Well, I like this story, actually. It's quite interesting. I think the current general manager of the National Theatre is only just trying to save her skin at the moment or so. Because when I look at the situation and with all the comments that she's made, referring the National Theatre not being an historic monument and there shouldn't be any need to privatize it, I look at it and I ask this simple question: when was the last time any of us here in this room have actually been to the National Theatre? We only drive past it and we look at the structure. It's dilapidated, it's been there for years and it's not really being utilized fully.
So when you're now telling me now that we don't need to privatize it or concession it, I would say I totally disagree with that. There's no point having an edifice of that nature just sitting down doing nothing. She's made so many statements as there's going to be an exchange program through theater and art, and a lot of foreigners will be coming over to actually utilize the National Theatre. And I'm thinking, even the locals are not actually utilizing it. I stand corrected if I'm wrong on this, but it's an eyesore when we look at the National Theatre and the state that it was in when it was commissioned several years ago, and where it currently is now. I think privatizing it and having either privatization or concessioning it anyway would make a lot more sense if you're looking at concessioning. You could actually tie the usage as well too. You could actually tie the usage of the infrastructure to what you want it to be used for, and therefore everybody is winning. No one is losing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gbolahan. We've got messages coming in. MI from Akoka says the election results, talking about those in Osun State, didn't just raise eyebrows, they also turned heads. Now I'll leave the legal luminaries to weigh in on that with their learned opinions. Generally, I am impressed by the competition. Eku inconclusive, he says. Waji sends in this message to say democracy is very expensive. Osun State, like Gbolahan said, is a litmus test for INEC in the coming year. The important thing here is for us to understand that the hard thing to do and the right thing to do are usually the same thing. Ruling this election inconclusive is the right thing to do because it was riddled with too many irregularities. So let us keep working to get things right. While Trevor Noah's lapel pin sends in messages to say that the Not Too Young to Run bill is a farce. Which young person can pay 45 million naira for a nomination
You'll be
form?
surprised.
All right. We keep it moving though. What they're not paying is other people paying, the backers. All right. So it's still not the young people. Anyways, next story, Fred, from the Punch newspaper. The National Assembly postpones its resumption till October 9th. Why? Well, apparently it's due to all the activities of the primaries of the political parties. They say, listen, that September 25th date that was fixed earlier is just no longer feasible. Fred, what are your thoughts on the importance or what our National Assembly considers to be most important to them?
Obviously, their personal and their personal interest is what's important to them. But this one, I'll actually give them a pass for.
Okay.
Because
Why is that?
you have to make sure your house is in order. And so the different political parties are having their primaries around this time, and that's going to be a bit distracting because you're going to be going back and forth and focusing like, what are we doing? What's happening at home, which is the party, and then and through the party, and of course the party selecting you and people voting for you, you get to be chosen to go represent your constituencies in Abuja. So I would for this one, I would give them a pass that there's a bit of you should pay attention to what's happening in the party as a group.
Understood, Fred. However, we still have a situation where our not just our National Assembly, but in general as a populace, we keep talking about people focusing on what's important. Elections, we know, will come about every 4 years. Shouldn't there be some sort of system or mechanism in place to allow for them, yes, to deal with whatever intrigues are going on within the parties, which we see spread across the pages of the newspapers, but to make sure that governance doesn't stop? We've had a National Assembly that's been on holiday for quite a while, and initially the reasons for not coming back were, the presidency is trying to do X, Y, Z, then, we're not ready for this, and now it's down to the political parties. Well, arguably, we could say from now till elections next year, things are going to be very political, and the parties are going to need a fair amount of focus. Does that mean we won't have a sitting assembly until then?
No, we will. So the goal is this part is pretty important, and once this is dealt with, then we're going to be dealing with every other thing that's going to be, I know there's going to be a lot of distractions. This election season is going to be distractions. Probably some of them are going to be running for offices and all of that. But beyond this particular time, I am hoping.
Hopeful. There you go. We live in hope in Nigeria. We're always hopeful.
I'm hopeful that they're going to be in Abuja dealing with, the policies they're rightfully supposed to be dealing with.
Because we're hopeful.
Although it's going to be a heated and interesting political
period we're going to go into.
Thank you for that, Fred. Very diplomatic. I appreciate you. Up next, let's talk about pension. Speaking of things that we should be paying attention to, the New Telegraph gives us this story about pension arrears. The federal government is to raise 800 billion naira via promissory note. So some more IOUs are coming through from our government, but the details essentially say that the government may raise that amount mentioned earlier via promissory notes. This is because it is disturbed by the pile-up of a backlog of arrears of pension liabilities owed to retired federal government employees, and so they've consented to raising this note or a bond through the Debt Management Office for its clearance. Gbolahan, your thoughts?
Well, the elections are just right by the corner, and the pensioners are also going to be voting. So, since we've been giving money out and doling money out, I think it's quite important as well to actually pay those that we do owe money to, what is actually owed to them. When we look at this story, we're talking about so many government agencies that have actually been entangled in this non-payment of pensions, and also their severance packages as well too. We're looking at Nikon. We're also looking at the Bureau of Public Enterprise, the Nigerian Reinsurance Corporation, and the Delta Steel Company. Nitel is also one of those companies as well. Of course, let's not forget as well too, recently we were talking about Nigerian Airways as well too.
Yes.
So there's so many government-owned companies or organizations that are actually entangled in this. And the issue is quite a lot of all these companies have actually been privatized several years back now. We're talking about 13 years, and you'd have expected that their packages should have been sorted out way before this. But unfortunately, we've left it so late, and everything has been piling up. And just as we said, what normally tends to happen is that one government after the other just keeps on passing the buck and kicking the can down the road. So if they would eventually end up paying this, it'll be great, at least to clear the backlog anyway. Let them clear the backlog, even though we also have an issue with the amount of money that the government is actually owing at the moment. I know last week we were actually talking about 22 trillion naira that is currently being owed. So we're now looking at another 800 billion that will be added onto that list.
Thank you very much for that, Gbolahan. Lots of IOUs, lots of promises, lots of activity around election time. Speaking of which, let's go over to the next story now. From the Guardian newspaper, we have this headline: a minister seeks more time to account for spending on water projects. Now, we're talking about the Minister of Water Resources, Mr. Suleiman Adamu. He's asked the Federal High Court in Lagos to grant the ministry a bit more time with which to compile and furnish the SERAP, that's the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, with information on the spending on water and locations of specific water projects. Now, this story is a follow-up from activities of SERAP from March of this year. On the 4th of March, they had gone to the court. They had gone to the papers to say, listen, we're going to sue both the Ministry of Water Resources and Agriculture for information with regards to what's happening with our water, because they'd alleged in that article that millions of Nigerians were drinking contaminated water. Now, the Minister of Water Resources, Mr. Adamu, had actually also in March, I believe on the 12th of March, written back to say, listen, the enormity of what you're asking for is going to take time. We're going to get there. But we're now in September.
Exactly.
We still have no information. And what's more, Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Adogbe, has not responded to SERAP. What are your thoughts, Ayo?
So since March till now, and they still asking for more time, it just shows how they see how they take this lightly. Okay, a report came out in 2017 by UNICEF saying that over 57 million Nigerians don't have access to drinking potable water, basically. And one good thing I like about this whole thing is that the SERAP is putting them on their toes. It's not more business as usual as they always think it is. It's also so funny because now this is the case of like an ostrich. I'm supposing, because he's saying it's not true that millions of Nigerians are drinking water from contaminated sources. That to even mention that, to even assume or to make such a remark as if you don't know. I mean, this is a detailed report that actually came out from UNICEF, and still not accepting that this faults still occur in itself, it's painful.
And going on to say it's not just them that supply water,
and then,
by the way.
Exactly, they're saying that it's not just them. I mean, the name of your ministry is it's right there. But anyway, it's all good. I don't know how much time we're going to give them. You see, this is one of the things that we're also saying, that there should be some form of KPIs. Already in your company or in this organization, in the ministry, you expect that this data should be there immediately we ask for it. Now, we understand that there might be some kind of auditing because we're talking about funds here also. We know that there's going to be some kind of auditing so that you don't come out to give us an information that you now come back and say it's not. We get that part. However, there's some information that should be there at your fingertip, and when we ask for it, you should be able to give it to us.
Thank you very much for that, Ayo. Basically, be up and doing. No
Yeah.
more passes, guys. Up next, God is Good Motors passengers kidnapped and some released after a ransom payment rather. The Premium Times carries on this bit of investigative journalism, which basically tells us that last week Thursday is when this kidnapping situation occurred. Since then, God is Good Motors and the police have not put out any official statement or made any comments really about the passengers that were kidnapped. Now, this kidnapped happened on a daytime trip where passengers boarded in Enugu heading to Lagos. They were kidnapped around noon somewhere in Ore in Ondo State. And we know about this because the Premium Times was able to get in touch with one returned passengers and speak to the family who paid a 1 million naira ransom for them. What are your thoughts on this, Fred?
I think I need a lot more time to break this down. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on. First of all, the issue here is like if you read the story, it says the driver didn't get kidnapped.
Yes.
The vehicle, the asset to God is Good didn't get taken. God is Good is not responding, so it's pointing that they're really not taking any responsibility with this. Although it states that the driver has been, God is Good representative said the driver had been arrested and is with the police. The other thing it speaks to is that so if in another news which said before 8 to 9% of the people travel by air, means like predominantly of the citizens are traveling by road.
Yes.
This puts a large portion of people open for this kind of attacks, right? Is there, and there's no insurance from God is Good, because we're not speaking about is the insurance company because they should insure the lives of their passengers, right?
Absolutely.
We're not speaking about is there insurance company, is there insurance policy in regards to this. The other thing I'm afraid of is copycats. So if we see that this is like, oh, this is a viable opportunity or business thing that's playing out,
Which we have been seeing across
yeah,
the
so
country.
people now start doing this. So we need God is Good to really
To address the
to address this
situation.
first, to work with the authorities, the police, also put some kind of insurance policy in place for this, and but it's just sad because if majority of our population are traveling by road, there's another thing you have to deal with. You have to deal with just the
All
issues of
So,
Thank
but
you
if you think about putting insurance also, it's going to be more cost to the passengers because
yeah, so
they're not going to, but the thing, price of transportation is already up. So it's a catch-22. So I understand the fact that we need to insure, but we should be thinking more about the security of on the roads
That's also the reality of our roads. We insure our
And
goods on the high seas.
There's a passenger manifest.
Yes.
yes.
But
But
that just
we do have
covers-
to move on for time reasons. We've got less than a minute to get through our final story very quickly. Even though, to be fair, this is really more of a comment than anything else.
Yeah.
Buhari leaves for the United Nations to fight against corruption, illicit asset, terrorism. All of these top his agenda. So this happened. He left on Sunday night, I believe. Took off for the United Nations General Assembly. It's the 73rd of them. The theme being relevant to all people, global leadership, and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable society. It's very fancy stuff there. We've got a president who's very good with international PR. What are your thoughts?
You don't have two emotions here. Okay, the first one, I'm happy that President is going to be speaking again. We get to hear something from him.
Okay.
Second, anxiety.
You're worried as to what he's
I hope this time around he's not going to demarcate us. So anyhow, let's hear what the president has to say, and then
Okay, thank you very much. Messages very quickly to round up with. We've got this one in.
Shegun says a National Assembly should not have closed early since they knew there will be primaries. The President of the Senate and the Leader of the House of Representatives have the power to order the resumption of the National Assembly
and the SP wants the president of Nigeria.
Wants to be president.
Wants to be
yes, our
president.
Senate
Interesting.
president. That is true.
Henry says, hi guys, ministries, water resources, their minister is in the name. This information should be quick and print. Providing portable drinking water is your primary, your only job. Asking for more time after 6 months to give us this information may be seen as funny business going on in your ministry.
And finally, this one in from Big T who says, the God is good motives kidnap is very alarming. Once this becomes a trend, imagine the chaos.
Yeah.
Passengers become soft targets. The government needs to act fast to secure our roads.
Lagos coming up next in 15 minutes. We'll be talking sports inside of the locker room. Special thanks to our analysts for coming in. Mr. G Quest at Mr. G Quest on Twitter at Esho1 and Mr. FB Alison. Good morning.
From Page Financials.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
A friend of mine sent me a thingy that his company was one of the ones that got